Louis Oosthuizen posted his withdrawal, and one absence made the list harder to ignore. Tiger Woods remained sidelined. Phil Mickelson stayed home. Zach Johnson chose the Senior Open. Different reasons, yet the empty spaces landed together. That is the uncomfortable part. This was not a player boycott, and no document shows a secret agreement. The real issue sits underneath those easy theories. Fans counted former winners, added other missing major names, and pushed the number toward 11 major champions before asking why they would skip a tour event. Because the Open belongs to the R&A, calling this a PGA Tour failure bends the truth. Calling it a crisis bends it, although golf's dependence on aging celebrities remains real. Then another question surfaced. Were furious sponsors starting to demand immediate answers? No credible sponsor made that demand. The suspicion grew because title partners pay for star power, while familiar faces keep disappearing for injuries, health matters, eligibility changes, and scheduling decisions. Scheffler now represents stability. Tom Kim represents the next sales pitch. Subscribe and tell me whether you watch tournaments for the trophy or the famous names holding it. Now we can examine how a misleading count exposed a problem. Louis Oosthuizen's announcement mattered because it arrived when the field had almost taken its final shape. Until that point, every missing name could be viewed separately. Tiger Woods had his physical problems. Phil Mickelson had stepped away because of a family health matter. Other former champions faced their own choices or limitations. Oosthuizen's withdrawal brought those scattered cases into one picture. His back injury removed the 2010 champion from Royal Birkdale and placed Aldrich Potgieter into the championship as an alternate. That simple change made the list look heavier. Fans no longer saw isolated explanations. They saw another recognizable champion disappearing before the first shot. His message contained no attack on the R&A, the PGA Tour, or the championship. Oosthuizen said he was extremely disappointed and needed to make a full recovery his priority. He also withdrew from a LAV golf event, which weakened any suggestion that he was rejecting the Open for another league. His body made the decision, yet social media rarely allows separate explanations to remain separate. A photograph of Oosthuizen beside a list of missing champions could travel farther than the medical context. Once that happened, his post stopped being a routine injury update. It became the moment that encouraged people to count everyone who was absent. The first problem involved the count itself. Reports identified 10 former Open champions who were not competing at Royal Birkdale. That group included Woods, Mickelson, Oosthuizen, Zach Johnson, Ernie Els, Justin Leonard, Todd Hamilton, Ben Curtis, Paul Lawrie, and John Daly. Their names carried major history, but their circumstances were not connected. Some remained exempt, yet did not enter. Others were affected by physical issues. Johnson chose the Senior Open. Hamilton and Daly were no longer protected by the old past champion age rule. Treating all those players as if they had jointly decided to skip one event created a cleaner story, although it destroyed the truth behind the individual decisions. Reaching 11 required changing the category. A storyteller could add another missing major winner, such as Dustin Johnson, Sergio Garcia, or another recognizable absentee. That would produce an attractive number, but it would no longer describe 11 former Open champions. Dustin Johnson did not qualify. Garcia tried to earn his place through final qualifying and failed. Their absence cannot fairly be described as skipping the championship. Qualification failure carries a different meaning from refusing an invitation. Combining both situations allows the headline to sound convincing while keeping the evidence just far enough away that most viewers will not question it immediately. The second problem concerned the organization being blamed. The Open is governed by the R&A. It is not a regular PGA Tour tournament created and controlled from the tour's headquarters. PGA Tour members compete there, and success carries enormous value across professional golf, but the PGA Tour did not assemble the field under its ordinary tournament rules. That makes the phrase PGA Tour crisis an interpretation of golf's wider condition rather than a description of who managed Royal Birkdale. This distinction may look technical. Commercially, it changes who can answer questions about exemptions, qualification routes, and former champion eligibility. The R&A had already revised the exemption for past Open champions, lowering its age limit from 60 to 55. That change affected older winners who had once enjoyed a longer path back into the field. It also reflected a difficult balance. The championship respects its history, but the field must retain places for active competitors who can qualify on current form. Allowing every aging winner to return indefinitely creates emotional value while taking opportunities from younger golfers. Tightening the rule creates stronger competition, although it removes familiar faces. Neither choice can satisfy every fan. That conflict explains why Scottie Scheffler became essential to the real story. He represented the championship's present strength. His quiet dominance had already established him as the player every contender measured himself against. Scheffler did not need to respond to the absence list. His position carried the response for him. A field containing the world's leading player cannot honestly be described as abandoned. His presence showed that competitive quality survived even when several celebrated names were missing. Scheffler's core instinct has always been control without spectacle. He rarely needs a dramatic declaration to make his authority visible. The scorecard usually handles that work. When older champions disappear, this restrained personality becomes both an advantage and a commercial challenge. Serious golf fans understand what his consistency means. Casual viewers sometimes connect faster with conflict, celebrity, or a famous comeback. Scheffler can dominate the sport without producing the noisy behavior that turns every appearance into a social media event. His golf protects the product, but his calm manner asks promoters to sell excellence rather than controversy. Tom Kim stood across from that established power with a different burden. He arrived after winning the Genesis Scottish Open through a closing 64 that contained no bogeys. That victory did more than improve his position. It gave the championship a rising player carrying immediate momentum. Kim had the form, personality, and international appeal needed for a challenger's role. The missing legends created room around him, but that room came with pressure. Golf was quietly asking whether players from his generation could become important quickly enough to replace names audiences had followed for decades. His rise also complicated the crisis argument. A championship cannot create a new star if every conversation remains fixed on absent veterans. Kim's opportunity existed partly because attention eventually had to move toward the players who qualified and appeared. The Open's history was built by champions taking possession of a stage that once belonged to somebody else. Woods displaced earlier icons. Mickelson eventually built his own Open moment. Oosthuizen became a champion when he dominated at St. Andrews. Succession can feel like loss while it is happening, even though the same process keeps the sport alive. The comparison between Scheffler and Kim therefore carried more meaning than a standard leaderboard matchup. Scheffler represented proven greatness operating in the present. Kim carried the possibility of future celebrity. One had already earned the expectation of dominance, while the other needed to convert momentum into major credibility. Their different positions answered the missing champion question more honestly than any invented boycott. Golf did not face an empty stage. It faced the harder task of persuading viewers that the players now occupying it deserved the same emotional investment once given to Tiger, Phil, and the other absent winners. That brings the story to the sponsors because commercial partners do not purchase history alone. They purchase attention connected to the current event. A famous name can influence television interest, hospitality demand, promotional material, and online discussion. When several recognizable players disappear, concern is understandable. Concern, however, is not proof of fury. No credible sponsor publicly demanded immediate answers over the Royal Birkdale absences. No verified ultimatum blamed the PGA Tour. No documented meeting produced threats connected to these 10 former champions. The strongest words in the title describe a reaction that has not been established. The available business evidence points in a less explosive direction. Genesis extended its connection with the Scottish Open through 2030. That commitment does not prove that every company is pleased with every field. It does show that a major brand still sees long-term value in elite golf. PGA Tour officials have also spoken positively about sponsor responses to the structural model planned for 2028. Their comments naturally represent the tour's position, so they should not be treated as independent proof of universal satisfaction. They still conflict with the idea that sponsors had entered an immediate revolt over missing champions. A real pressure point remains beneath those reassuring statements. PGA Tour purses increased sharply during the competition with LIV Golf. Larger prize funds raised the commercial demands surrounding tournaments. Title partners want strong fields because their names appear beside the event every time it is promoted. When stars choose lighter schedules, suffer injuries, lose eligibility, or compete elsewhere, an ordinary tournament can struggle to deliver the celebrity value attached to its price. That concern has contributed to wider debate about signature events, sponsor exemptions, field sizes, and the concentration of leading players in selected weeks. Royal Birkdale did not create that problem, but the absence list made it visible. Woods remains one of the most powerful names in sports despite being unable to compete regularly. Mickelson still generates attention through his history and his association with LIV Golf. Oosthuizen retains status because an Open victory never disappears from a player's identity. Their value demonstrates golf's strength, though it also exposes a weakness. If inactive or aging champions still control the emotional temperature around a major, the sport has not completed its transition toward the next generation. Equipment and apparel companies understand that transition. A player's commercial value grows through victories, major contention, recognizable behavior, and repeated television exposure. Brands cannot manufacture all of those ingredients through advertising. They need the golfer to produce moments that fans remember. Scheffler provides victories and elite reliability. Kim offers youth, energy, and access to an international audience. Their commercial identities differ, but both matter to a sport trying to reduce its dependence on legends whose playing schedules can no longer be guaranteed. The human drama sits inside that demand. Scheffler did not choose to become the answer to every question about golf's future. His performance placed him there. Each absence increases the weight on players like him, because tournaments need somebody who makes the result feel historically important. His quiet dominance becomes a form of responsibility. A poor week from Scheffler does not merely affect his own campaign when other famous names are gone. It can leave promoters searching for a storyline that casual fans recognize. Kim faces pressure from the opposite direction. A recent victory creates attention, but major championships measure whether that attention lasts. He entered the picture as the hungry challenger who could attack the space opened by older champions. His Scottish Open success raised expectations before Royal Birkdale. Momentum gave him an opportunity, although it could not guarantee another trophy. That uncertainty makes the challenger valuable. Fans need someone who might disrupt the established order, especially when the champion at the top appears difficult to move. This is where the original outrage begins to collapse into a more useful conclusion. The missing champions did not coordinate their decisions. Sponsors did not issue the alleged demand. The PGA Tour did not control the Open's field. 11 was not a clean count of former Open winners. Nearly every dramatic element changes once examined closely. Yet the misleading presentation uncovered a concern that should not be dismissed simply because the headline exaggerated it. Golf is approaching a generational handover that no organization can postpone forever. Woods cannot remain the automatic center of every event. Mickelson's presence cannot be assumed. Older Open champions will continue losing eligibility or choosing senior competition. Injuries will remove other familiar players without warning. The sport must develop new personalities while protecting the competitive standards that made its legends meaningful. That process requires patience from fans and confidence from commercial partners. Scheffler and Kim offer two sides of the answer. Scheffler shows that modern golf already possesses an established champion capable of carrying competitive credibility. Kim shows that new challengers can arrive with momentum and create fresh emotional stakes. Their value does not depend on pretending the absent champions never mattered. It depends on giving current players enough room to build moments that eventually matter just as much. The real crisis would begin if golf refused to make that transition. Endless reliance on absent stars would weaken every field before play began. Sponsors would eventually question why yesterday's champions remained more marketable than today's contenders. Younger golfers would struggle to become familiar because coverage kept returning to people who were not competing. That outcome is possible, but Royal Birkdale did not prove it had already happened. Oosthuizen's withdrawal post changed the conversation because it made the accumulated absences visible. It did not reveal a rebellion. It revealed how quickly unrelated facts can be assembled into one accusation when fans already sense a larger weakness. The post supplied the emotional trigger. The count supplied scale. The sponsor question supplied financial danger. Careful examination removed the conspiracy while leaving the succession challenge intact. So the immediate answers are less furious than the title suggests. 10 former Open champions were absent. Another major winner can be added only by shifting the category. Their reasons were individual. The RNA controlled the championship. Sponsors made no verified public demand. Scheffler remained the established force, while Kim entered as the challenger with fresh momentum. Those facts do not describe collapse. They describe a sport caught between the legends who built its audience and the players now responsible for keeping it. The next time a famous withdrawal appears online, watch what happens after the original post. Notice how quickly one medical update becomes evidence of institutional trouble. Then examine who actually benefits from the empty space. Golf's future will not be decided by the champions who are missing. It will be decided by the players who arrive, contend, and create the moments that future audiences refuse to forget. Subscribe if you want every dramatic golf claim followed all the way to the truth, and tell us whether Scheffler, Tom Kim, or another rising player can carry the sport beyond the Tiger and Phil era.